for them. CIA is complicit in a lot of crimes. A lot of crimes,
I'm there with me right now. He's been undethroned. Dear Tommy, welcome back to the Expert Witness Show. Welcome to you guys. Will you just kind of tell our listeners, what happened and what have you found? DEA agents and there's additional people involved were leaking classified information to narco traffickers because they're illegal narco traffickers and all those club members of the Guardian National Police. They committed every kind of crime imaginable against the American people with the protection of those agencies. They basically had a criminal organization going that involved, which information was used to help them assist them in their narco trafficking business. A number of people were murdered as a result of this. Informants that were being run by various government agencies got compromised. There was a wiretap intercept where allegedly the DEA agent was involved in money laundering for the paramilitary organizations down there, which are heavily involved in the drug trafficking. And the paramilitaries and the narco traffickers are also indistinguishable. A lot of the, for example, the North Valley cartel narco traffickers are former Colombian National Police. And so we found this group at some level to a corrupt narco state in Colombia, which is backed up by our government. The Department of Justice attorney wrote a memo in 2004 alleging that there was major corruption in the U.S. Embassy in Bogota involving U.S. law enforcement agents. That's been backed up by multiple documents in the DEA investigation.
I call on anyone in this country that has a nerve, that works for our government, to turn over records and documents pertaining to the illicit crimes that are taking place in this country right now. Absolutely astounding that our tax money is paying for these crimes. Is paying. We're supposedly over there to fight a war on drugs in Colombia, and we are there literally dealing for them. We are literally going there and just sending people out and, harming our own citizens as well as the targeting and all of this. They are destroying lives at the benefit of themselves. It's just absolutely unreal. Here's another statement I think you should hear. This is from a former DEA agent.
Mr. Vice President, this is Celerino Castillo, our senior DEA agent. And how do you do? You're a hero for the country. And Sully said, Mr. Vice President, I got to talk to you. There's something really wrong going on here. They're flying drugs out of 4 and 5, and the CIA's behind it. George Bush said, nice to meet you. Walked away. Don't let anybody ever tell you there is no evidence. There is a mountain of evidence already in existence. Okay, it is irrefutable, it is ironclad. All right. Now, given that, I want to paint a little picture for you. I want to go back historically because my own experience is going to add a little dimension to this for you. Picture that I have a blackboard behind me, which I don't. Okay, let's say there's a blackboard. We're going to say that right here is Southeast Asia, and then right here is the United States, and right here is South America, and over here is the Middle East. Okay. Somebody was talking earlier about organized crime and CIA, and of course my opinion is CIA is organized crime. In the Second World War, some deals were made between the Office of Strategic Services and the Mafia in New Orleans. We were afraid of Nazi sabotage, so we took the guy named Lucky Luciano out of prison in New York. And and he guaranteed that there would be no sabotage on the docks in New York. We took a guy named Vito Genovese. I like that. Vito Genovese. And we let him go back to Sicily to spy on it so that we could invade Sicily when Pat would go in there, went in there. Of course, they went right back into the drug business. They went right back into their operations. The bond is very, very close. Stop there. Fast forward to 1954. 1954, Dien Bien Phu. The French were kicked out of Indochina. Now, almost everybody knows that the Golden Triangle in Indochina is where most of the world's heroin has come from for a long time. It is the largest opium-growing region in the world. There are several others. The French, in order to sustain their war, had been paying the local tribesmen, the Hmong tribesmen, and Kuomintang, the Chinese who were kicked out of China, with opium, which was a long holdover from the British opium trade from the 18th century. When the French
we filled that void. And we sent some people to Indochina. Their names were Adderholt, Singlaub. Does that ring a bell to anybody? There was also a guy by the name of Paul Hallowell, and there was a guy by the name of Richard Stilwell. And these are the people that we sent into Southeast Asia, CIA, to take over where the French left. Extremely well documented. And one of the first things John Singlaub did, and one of the first things Paul Hallowell did, was to take over the payment that Kuomintang and other rebels with heroin. It was just the way you did business. As we moved closer to the Vietnam era, that trade began to expand because of the relationship between CIA and the Mafia. As we get to the Vietnam War, now again, picture I'm drawing on the board up here some other names. So if we fast forward to the Vietnam era, I'm going to write some other names in Southeast Asia. Theodore Shackley, Station Chief in Laos, later Station Chief in Saigon. Richard Secord, anybody ever hear that name? Nah. Richard Armitage, anybody ever hear that name? Erich von Marbod, anybody ever hear that name? Okay. Von Marbod was in the military at the time, Department of Defense. They all worked extremely closely together. Tom Klein was another one who was Ted Shackley's deputy in Laos. Extremely well documented. There are still living witnesses. There are Air America pilots still alive who later became involved in Iran-Contra. That we ran the whole war in Laos, which was completely outside of congressional oversight, with heroin. We've all heard the stories about heroin coming back in body cavities in the dead GIs. Air America, Air Heroin, okay, the Black Plains. In the last 19 years, I have spoken to more than a dozen former members of the U.S. Army Special Forces, the Green Berets, who were sometimes ordered to carry the heroin by CIA. We ran this whole war there on heroin money. That heroin money did not just pay for the war, it paid for a lot of other things. Now, what happened is, and the picture that I want to paint to you is, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with the disease of alcoholism. Okay? I happen to be an alcoholic. I'm sober 14 years. Okay? So I know a little bit about it. And what happens is that it's a progressive disease. One is too many, and 10,000 is not enough. Once you take a little, you have to take more. And there's no way to stop until you crash and burn, until you eventually burn yourself out. What happened in Vietnam was that by 1970, the heroin trade had spilled over and we were selling it to our own GIs. 1/3 of the GIs in Vietnam were addicted to heroin when they came back. Okay, they were smoking it or two, and they didn't get what's called a stomach Jones. So that war continued, I think, until the military-industrial complex kind of milked it for all it was worth, and until white middle America took to the streets. Okay? 1975, it ended. Now I'm going to tell you about my story, because this is where I come into the picture.